all, do you all have access, do you have access to the template? Have you seen the template, and do you generally use it, or is it? Okay.
You don't use it.
All right, so I'm actually going to walk us through with the template, and those of you guys who are fishbowling this, what I would like for you to do while we are listening to our group go through the process, I'd like for you to think about what you would do in your own PLC. So what are some questions that you could ask, or some things that come up in your own PLC, okay? So, when we're doing this, let's see, I'm gonna download. Do you mind if I save?
Oh, you're fine.
Okay, good. Because generally, it's best, when we give you a template like this, the thing about the process is that the process is meant to serve, as I said, as a guide, but you know, that doesn't mean that this is a script that you can't deviate from. It doesn't mean that you can't dig a little deeper or go in a different direction. But I will say that when you're using the template, if you're looking at least if you hit the questions that are laid out here, it'll help you stay focused and help guide your work. So, do you guys have a PLC leader who generally?
We usually take
All right,
turns.
so who wants to be the leader today?
Oh, not me. Like, I'm not real right now. Like,
Do it.
Oh dear.
I'll do it.
Okay, thank you.
What does the leader have to do?
So the leader basically just walks us through the steps, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to scribe for you all. So I'm going to fill in what you're talking about as you're talking about, so you guys can engage in the conversation. Don't have to worry about taking notes. And then as Rhonda, I will kind of guide you. Like if there's a question or something that I feel like could kind of help you to clarify, I'll chime in if that's okay. I'll kibitz. Okay? All right.
So what essential skills and knowledge should we analyze in the theme? Theme is a big one.
Inference
and context. So what about this experience?
Characters. I think RL 4.3 was not really our focus there. That's
No.
just kind of something that is
And they did
in
so
pretty much
well on
any
it.
type of, right,
I mean, did yours, those were ahead of 1 and 0
right.
in this week. For those in that 4.3.
What do the terms, so for that, we're just talking about what do we mean by inferencing?
Well, what we're talking about, so what form did your data come in? Did you look at like percent correct? Did you look at, so a lot of times when we get, especially benchmark scores or benchmark tests, we get things like level, percent. So it's just making clear that we know what the data is telling us. Like, what are we looking at?
Kirsten did this for us, so
Okay.
each question, 1A, 1B, whatever,
we
it goes
just-
under the standard.
Okay,
We just looked at the total number of students,
okay, all right.
the number of students who missed it. and that.
So yeah, so what you guys are looking at is, so in this, on your report, an X means that they got it
Wrong.
incorrect? Okay, so the lower the number, the better the
Yes,
score,
yes.
right? Okay, so that's important to know. So one of the things that we're looking at is, the lower the number, the better the performance. So the report looks at wrong answers, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, that is.
So that's really helpful to know, because just to make sure that everybody's on the right page, because you're like, oh no, this one has a 5, this is great. No.
Yeah.
Okay? All right. Anything else about any other quirks about the way that the data is laid out, or the reports, or?
I think it's important for us to look at, we had several questions that had a part A and a part B
Mhm.
that connected, because I think as we looked through it, we noticed there was a distinct difference
part was usually like what is the theme, and then the B part was what
Prove it.
sentences prove that.
That was
Right.
the
And that's where
biggest
they-
one,
yep.
8B,
Yep.
proving it.
So,
4B we did fine on, but 8B.
So how many short answers were there out of the 11?
One
So-
was, why did she feel elated?
Two short response, but there were also,
There's one you had to find sentences that
Right.
supported an
Underline
answer
3
to-
sentences from the passage.
None of them you had to write.
so in the part A, you actually identified what the theme was or whatever, and then part B asked them to cite the evidence, and they had
Yeah.
trouble with the citing of the evidence? Okay, all right, that's good to know. All right, anything else about the data that we need to make note of or be aware of?
I had 2 kids that skipped problems. I don't know
Okay.
if that's where they need to go back and do.
Was it the same problem?
Nope,
Did you count it?
I
wrong?
didn't.
You just
I
didn't
just
put an
wrote
X.
skip in the
Oh,
box,
okay.
cause I wasn't really sure.
Okay, okay. All right, anything else that we need to know about the data before we start digging into analyzing?
would those be the things that we talked about earlier?
Mhm.
That my kids took it with a substitute?
Yes.
And many of them had to take it over multiple days because they didn't finish it.
Exactly. That's that step.
Several.
Do you have the questions identified as?
Standard.
Right.
Standard, yes.
And you said a couple of you kids haven't
I have
finished
2
it.
that are done.
If anybody wanted to see what the
We
assessment
could-
was,
we
it's
could
on
move up.
Teacher Toolbox.
Okay.
So you can log into Teacher Toolbox and pull it up.
And we could put our chairs
Somebody
closer.
listed it.
Oh, okay.
So Carrie has the chart, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we all-
Well, we all have our
Oh,
own
each
class
person has
data.
their own chart.
Okay,
This was assessed.
Oh,
all right.
But they have a chart right on their thing.
right. So they each.
So when you're looking
So they
at
came
the
prepared
assessment,
with
what
the
is
data,
it,
not
and you guys,
scoring.
we
Exactly.
talked about this a little bit, what was it that you were hoping to find out as a result of this assessment?
The master theme.
Inferencing
All
and
3 of
content.
them, yeah. 'Cause we've gone back and done some reteaching.
Master's
So it's more of a summative.
inferencing, and
Context.
Okay. So this is, this is more kind of, we're moving more towards summative, yes? Because we're getting towards it. All right. So do any of you all have questions about the data or, anything that you'd like to know that might help you to understand as we're digging into this? Okay. So when we're looking at the patterns, the first thing you want to do is look at what the kids got. And like I said, a lot of times we tend to go towards where the deficiencies are, and that doesn't serve us, because what we want to do is the things that they've got well, we're going to actually build upon as we go on. So looking at your data, what skills did the kids really do well in?
Context clues. Does this have to be like grade wide, or like could it be class wide?
It could be class-wide, although we're looking at this point, excuse me, we're looking at wide patterns. So especially if there are things that were consistent across the grade level, because that's gonna tell you that that's something that you all as a PLC or as a grade have going on really well, and that's something that you definitely wanna capitalize on. So looking at, I guess, what you need to do is kind of say, okay, my class did this, and kind of compare notes. So why don't you guys talk about that a little bit, like what each of your classes did, and look for those grade-wide patterns.
As a strict, let's look at.
Mhm.
Well, 3 was
Number two.
Number two.
Terrible.
Three was the worst.
Yeah, 3 was by far. It's
mistakes.
One B was my worst,
Yeah.
but one B was the
So
worst.
it has, is two our best?
All right, so what question 2 was the best?
Inferencing. Question number 2 was the one we had the least errors.
Okay. And what, can you, just, does somebody have access to the question, can you read it?
Yeah, it says, why does Mr. Bronny's horse wiggle his ears?
Okay,
That was like a right there question, that's why it didn't in the story say,
Well, they have the inference why he did it. It didn't tell them why.
no, but it was
Now when he wiggled his
pretty,
ear, when
says-
the
she's
children
saying a
was
high
practicing her
note.
music hit a high note.
It says, for the part in the text, it says occasionally he flicked his long tail to rid himself of a pesky fly, or now and then he wiggled an ear when Sylvia, who was practicing her graduation music, hit a high
That's
note.
kind of right.
That's what I said,
Not much of it.
it's not, it's barely an inferencing question, which is probably why it was our
If they
best
look
one.
back.
okay.
If they look back, yeah.
Right.
So that tells you that students are paying close attention to the text, right? They're
looking down.
referring to the text.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's something that you can build on, right? If you know the kids are looking back at the text when they, especially that'll help you, because I've noticed you said that citing evidence has been an issue for them. So that's something, that's a skill that you can build on.
I have a question real quick.
Yeah.
So I have several students that are several grade levels below,
Uh-huh,
and like they get PC services.
uh-huh.
Do we still look at them in the whole group? Like, do we include them in the whole piece of data, or?
Yes.
Because I'm looking, like, and I see, 1A was a huge strength for my class, and the only students that really struggled with that were students that are
Mhm.
several grades below
Mhm.
grade level, so.
So what we'll do is, when we get to stage 5, that's when you're looking at drilling down at individual students. So that's good to know, because that may mean that those individual students will need a little bit more support on that particular skill. And the discrepancy between, that's important to point out. Yes.
Can we real quick look at 3? What was that question, Kristen, that we struggled
Number
with
3,
them on?
read these sentences from the story. They tell Jane's thoughts about the horse. He had wings and could carry her away. He was the wooden horse of Troy, and many men could step out of him. It was a bridge that she could walk under. What can readers infer about Jane based on her thoughts?
Wow. About Jane, not the horse.
It was so good that we did that
That's
Greek
thinking.
context
Yeah.
clues, so they knew what that
Yeah.
Troy horse
Well, that's part of
was.
the standard.
Yeah.
And the answer was she's very imaginative.
She's very imaginative.
What were the other choices?
She's fond of Mr.
That's
Burney's
what it was.
horse.
And she likes her horse.
She wants to run away, or she wishes she lived in another time.
But I would pick she likes her horse, probably.
Yeah, that was a tough one.
But she's
And the kids did well on that one?
No,
That's
that
the
was the
hardest
one
one.
that
to
was
add.
the one they
6 out of
did.
19,
Okay.
probably some 8.
All right. So, let me ask you this, and this is something that each PLC kind of has to figure out on their own. Now, do you all, as a group, do you ever regroup your students across the grade?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, in that case, who were some students that performed really well on this assessment?
Anina, believe it or not, finally.
So, Amina.
Anina,
Jaden.
most of
My
the
ones like
AIG
did
kids
AIG in
did
the
fine.
higher reading group. Stayed with
But
us.
Anina's one who's been
Subi did really well.
struggling.
Okay.
Emily did really well.
My ones that were, actually had some
Ava.
AIG ones that missed it.
Oh, yeah, 2.
Subi did really well, SUBI, Subi.
They didn't even get a perfect score. No perfect score.
No perfect scores. There are a couple who
Oh, I
only
did.
missed
Daniel
one.
got a perfect score on this, so
Oh.
did Jesse.
Daniel.
Rafi got a
And
perfect
Paula,
score.
yeah.
Huh.
Paula,
Mars.
Daniel, Jesse, all got perfect
Anne and Naya only missed one.
Lucinda missed 1.
Maya.
Elena missed 1. Justin missed 1.
Zamora.
Is that the new student, Justin?
Mine only missed 3.
So, looking at the kids who did really well on this. So, and this is one of the things that I love about CFIP, is because a lot of times we tend to focus on the kids who are struggling, but the kids who did really well. So you had a couple of kids who had perfect scores on this. So what are you going to do before we dig in and start talking about how we're going to help the kids who need the extra help. These kids who've got it, what are we gonna do for those kids? What are we going to have them do when we're circling back around to work with the kids who need the extra help?
Well, some of them are pulled out for AIG services during that time anyhow.
Okay.
And Kirsten, how many of those other kids are in your highest reading group? The least in the higher reading group?
6 of them are in my higher reading group who we're working on novel study.
Okay. So they're working on novel study. So this is just a little check-in to make sure that our most able kids are not getting overlooked.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? All right. So let's talk about the skills that the kids seem to struggle with.
Theme.
Theme,
Okay.
especially supporting the theme,
Yes.
that theme
Yes.
part.
Cause my kids all pretty much off the theme, but couldn't back it up.
Okay.
I think that was then for my class, the supporting their answers regardless of what skill it was, because two of the questions that had, where they had to support were in that standard that we weren't really focusing on, but it's kind of in
Mhm.
every type of assessment you do.
Yeah.
So they did really well on finding the answers, but both of the B parts, they did poorly on.
That RL 4.1, citing evidence to support.
RL 4.3, the character showing is
Okay.
just
I
like
know.
the basics of
So literal with the, it was a bridge.
Okay. So would you say that universally in the whole grade, the kids really had a hard time identifying theme, and then for pretty much all of them supporting the answers with evidence from the text?
What did they identify?
Yeah, they identified.
They
I only
identified
had 3
it.
that missed that.
Yeah, I only had 2 that missed that.
Possibly 5.
So I don't think it's identifying themes so much as it is supporting.
Supporting.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 5, it means
Okay.
With evidence from the text.
Right.
All right. So, thinking about that, and this is where, we have to think about how we taught it and what our process is. So, can you think of any instructional factors that might have led to them having trouble with supporting evidence? Is there anything that maybe might have led to this? Anything that you can think of?
I think the fact that we're all new to 4th grade this year and we've never taught theme before.
Okay.
Theme is not something that is, right.
For us.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
time on the evidence part.
yeah.
So worried about what is the theme.
Getting the theme.
Yeah, that I think I can do better now that I've got one.
All right. So, so now that you've kind of got that under your belt, you're ready to move on to the next step of giving them practice. Okay. So,
Can I,
yeah,
can I ask a question?
absolutely.
So, as far as instructional factors that led to weaknesses,
Mhm.
if you're not new to teaching this, I mean, I feel, what are some other instructional factors that you hear
Yeah.
or that would be appropriate there? Cause I feel like that one was kind of an easy one to jump to. I'm not saying they shouldn't, cause
No.
definitely, but I know the things that I've been teaching for a while. So I'm just trying to think of what's appropriate other than that. to
Yeah,
put there.
so I can use some examples from when I was in the classroom. So one of the things that I was really bad about was that, I would not ever ask probing questions. So I would ask a question and say, like, okay, what is the theme of this? And if I got the right answer, it's like, awesome, let's move on. Instead of asking the question, well, how did you find that answer? Or requiring students to support that answer.
Especially with theme, because it took so long for them to just get it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not think right in the story to make that bigger jump.
Yeah. So maybe,
look at
if I had scripted my questions a little better or had been a little bit more deliberate or targeted in my questioning, I could have helped my kids to, because they're already right there, I could have just like pushed them a little bit further with those questions. Sometimes it could be the sequence, you know, like maybe I spent too much time on the basics and we didn't really get deep enough. Or, you know, if it's a mathematical thing, you know, maybe if I had flipped the order that I taught it in, maybe taught, you know, given them a chance to do inquiry or, you know, kind of figure out the big picture before we looked at the smaller things.
So that's more of you reflecting on what you would do differently.
Yes,
next
exactly.
time, so that wouldn't be like outside factors. It's truly like your reflection.
Yes, yes. What could I have done differently to do this better? Yes.
I know, like, I was just reviewing theme, and I had one of my AIG students.
It's Ray. He already talked to me about it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So he was saying that compared to how Ms. B taught it, I was teaching it wrong because I had that friendship and family is one of the 6 common themes. And he's like, family's not a theme. And like, we had a good, like, actually really good, like, talk about it with the class, although the class was like, you tried this the last time. But I mean, I had him look up in the dictionary, was like, because I had a definition. I was like, look in the dictionaries, tell me what it is. And he was saying that it was more of a topic. And then he's like, well, the dictionary's wrong on their definition. And he's like, well, then Ms. B taught it wrong. So I think it's also factors like patterns, like maybe if I had gotten with her and seen how she was teaching it, you know, then maybe it could be, you know, more consistent.
Well, it depends on the assessment and how they, the writer of the assessment,
Right.
defined theme, because this, the correct answer is some risks are dangerous but worth taking. So I could see a theme maybe being some families are families are
Families come in
unique.
different shapes and sizes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I do see it just depends on how
Right.
it's
And that comes with really understanding the standard and what the standard is asking. And you know, that's one of those things that it kind of, the thing about this process is it helps you to go, okay, well, maybe we need to have a conversation as a group of teachers and make sure that we're all clear on what the standard is asking us to do and what students really need to know, understand, and be able to do as this. Is it identify the topic? Is it put in a sentence the actual message or moral of the story? How is theme different than central idea? And
Right.
really
And I
dig
think
into
that's hard too, because stinking, oh my gosh, 1st grade, 2nd grade, and 3rd, it's all about fables, folk tales, and morals. And so that's 3 years of pounding that. And so kids automatically, and that's different from main idea, which theme is different from main idea, and theme does teach a lesson, but it's not as specific as those.
Right.
It's more general, and that you could go to any group, anywhere in the world, any age, they could identify with it. And so I think kids get lesson, message, and moral after 3 years, and then all of a sudden jumping into theme, and knowing that theme's not the same as main idea, but
Yeah.
then being like, well, how is it different from
and
lesson,
it
message, moral, from
Yeah,
table,
'cause-
folktale, whatever?
right.
Because, and it is, you know, and so, and I think so vertically planning and kind of thinking about how those things can scaffold throughout is helpful too.
Because Ray was focused on the moral portion of it.
Yeah, and he was doing what I said, because I tell them love is not a theme. Love stinks is a theme, love conquers all is a theme, those are themes. Family is not a theme.
Right.
That's a topic that you can get amazing themes from, but that's not a theme. Saying being part of family is hard, or families look different all over the world, or that is a theme. And so we kind of break it down step by step, but it does make it hard, because then they do hear it differently in different things. Our books, our books are raised by theme, arranged by theme. These books are about family. These books are
Right.
about-
Oh, yeah.
So it is, it's very different.
Yes.
So talking through that.
And that really signals, you know, kind of how our standards have evolved over the years. And, you know, one of the things about, just specifically talking about this topic and the switch from 3rd to 4th grade, you know, as the standard spirals up into the higher grade levels, it becomes more and more abstract. And I think that you brought up a really important point, is to know kind of where they're coming from, like what the 3rd grade standard is and looks like, and where they're going, what the 5th grade standard looks, and to kind of help you to understand you know, in fourth grade, these are the essence of what that standard is asking. And, you know, that's one of those things that in order to really be able to do this, we have to have those conversations, and a lot of times it gets lost in the, okay, well, how are we gonna do this? What are we gonna do that? So, great concept illuminated from this step in it. And the thing about the CFIP process is that, I mean, honestly, digging into the standards and understanding and being on the same page of what you're gonna teach, that's what PLCs are all about. That's the purpose, that's why we go through this process. So, you know, when you're in the midst of a CFIP discussion and you end up taking a bird walk talking about theme, that's exactly what you're supposed to be doing.
So that's when you're saying you're not necessarily.
You're not married to this, exactly, yes. So, and that's really an important, that's the difference between understanding how the process works and just following the process, you know what I mean? So I love that, this is exactly what you're supposed to be doing, so, good job. So, given that we've kind of illuminated, you know, and so theme is new for the PLC, it's different than third grade, it's more abstract. So how are you going to respond to the patterns? So you guys have just uncovered a really important issue. So what are some ways that as a PLC that you can grapple with this, can work with this?
I think we need to go back and do theme and give them more probing questions.
Right.
Now they've got theme, now we need to push them further to.
I think also maybe in reading groups, I've been focusing so much on nonfiction that I could take a break and go back and do a little bit of small group.
That's a good.
We saw nonfiction as a major weakness, so we've been really drilling that in our reading groups, because we're doing novel studies that are fiction. But they might need it on their level.
Maybe with poetry, poems. With theme.
Something at school, I know we're just working still towards, and I don't know if people already did this, but, you know, reaching out to Jessica, Malcolm, how are you incorporating theme into their visual art and their music? So it would be so reinforcing.
I wonder if you could, since you're all doing novel studies, kind of as you go, talk out loud about it. Or talk about what theme isn't. I really wonder if showing what it's not would help them see what it is.
Doing a
To like
prayer
pull one of
model.
those and be like, this is not the same. Let's talk about why. Walking under a horse, that's a lesson to be learned, but does that apply to all life, everywhere, everybody? No, they don't have horses. In Alaska, they have dogs. You can't walk under a dog anyway. It's too short. Right? They have giraffes. You can walk under it easily. You know, and stuff like that. But things in life that are dangerous that can also be kind of exciting. What are some things you can think of? Could that be a theme? And kind of walking through what it isn't to show what it is, so that they can kind of do that thinking themselves, I think would be helpful.
Cool. So we said,
Prayer model, make theme be one of your vocabulary focus words.
I don't like that, but that's the lesson. That's the exact one I was talking about. Don't walk under a horse. That's a lesson to be learned. It's true. You're not
as
supposed to walk.
a vocabulary.
Well, this girl was okay walking under a horse, so is that really a lesson?
Okay, so
I don't know if she did.
we've listed a bunch of stuff. So the idea now is, this is, we're kind of developing the action, okay? So, are you guys gonna go do this week? Are you gonna do it, tomorrow? Are you gonna, like, when, and in the process, you know, it's important to set a timeline for stuff. So, and try to be realistic, say, okay, you know, we don't do CFIP every week. We do CFIP every 2 weeks, or, so give yourself some time, a time guideline. So when would you like to come back together and talk about how this went?
I think it's fair for us to say that next week we can tie in a lot of that into our novel studies that we're doing anyways.
So the end of next week?
And our PLC's on Friday, so.
So
right, some more scripted probing.
Okay, and now, one of the things that I would do if I were in your group is say, you know what? You are amazing at writing really good high-level questions. Will you think about some questions? Are you guys all doing the same novels? Are they all different? Okay. So, maybe dig into your source and say, okay, you know, here's I used to have, I was an ELA teacher in middle school, but like the journal questions, you know, the kind of one-size-fits-all questions, I might go through and see if I can pull out some of those and really kind of tinker with them a little bit to help get at the theme, you know, like what are the lessons to be learned, or maybe I have a graphic organizer somewhere that I can pull in. But this is the point where, you know, in the process, this is where the planning takes place. So this is where, you know, if you have somebody like me, I would shut up and give you guys time to dig into your stuff, like dig into your instructional materials. This is where you actually make a plan and use the materials that you have to do that.
I've been using a theme graphic organizer. It makes it like an acronym, so ask questions like, what is the significance of the title? What emotions did you feel? And then going all the way down to kind of determining a theme. So I can send that to you guys.
Step 4 is when you would share, you're saying those types of.
Yes, exactly.
As a team and.
And, you know, you could say, you know what, I was walking down the hall the other day and I saw in 3rd grade they had something that was really cool. I'm going to go see if I can get that and maybe adapt that. So, you know, the idea is that this is not about telling you what to teach or how to teach. It's helping you to uncover, like, where you need to put your energy. Because we all have a finite amount of energy that we could spend. And if you are just sort of stabbing in the dark, that doesn't maximize your time. And so the idea is to go through this conversation, look at what your kid's data is telling you, and really focus your energy on that. Now, in another context, you know, you might think, and depending on how concerned you are or how, you know, how your philosophy works, you may go, okay, theme is huge, like on the EOG, theme is going to be huge on the EOG, so we are going to invest this time. You may look at this and go, you know what, on the EOG there's like 2 questions about this, but I feel like it's important that they understand this for life, so we're still going to spend the time on it. But, you know, thinking about what your assessment is, how you as a school assess what a successful student looks like, you know, make sure that where you're putting your time and your energy aligns with that assessment, whether it's the EOG or whether it's, you know, an EKPO student needs to have these skills, or, you know, I feel like my purpose for teaching these children is for them to come away with this. So making sure that your effort is aligned with that. Does that make sense? Okay. So in the process, this is when, you know, you go and you plan and then go and do it. And then at your next CFIP meeting, you'll sit down and you'll actually look at those individual students. So this is where your EC kids and your AIG kids, like the kids who still are kind of working with it. I love step 5 because this is where you kind of do the sweep and you keep kids from falling through the cracks. So, you know, after you've done these really cool targeted questions and you've done some non-examples and you've worked on developing the concept and you've picked it up through the novel study, you may want to do a quick reassessment on theme, and then at the next CFIP meeting, not necessarily your next PLC, but the next time you pick up the CFIP process, say, okay, as a result of that assessment, these kids got it, these still don't have it. And let's look at what they still are missing and what we might still need to look at. And then how are we going to intervene and who's going to provide them? So you actually do make a plan. So it may be that, you know, like your kids, they got theme. They got it so well, and so you're going to be like, can you take my kids for a little while and teach them the same way that you did? And I'll take your kids that have gotten it, and I'm going to go a little bit deeper into, you know, what works. So that's where the grouping comes into play. And then for step 6, and we're running out of time, so I want to make sure we pick this up. Step 6 is where you look at what's on the horizon, what's coming up. So after you finish talking about theme, where are you guys going next?
Review at this point.
Okay. So that would be when you review, like what are some of the big things that you feel like the kids are really going to need to nonfiction? Okay. So
What
looking
about
ahead,
like which part?
Text structure, text feature.
Text structure.
Using
that's
huge.
Okay. All right. So you might want to think about, all right, so the kids, we said the kids were really good. They did a really good job of being able to identify things, but we're still working on supporting answers. Knowing that we're going into nonfiction next, and knowing that we're going to be looking at text structures are also some ways that kids can use to kind of support their answers. So you may want to be thinking about how to lay the foundation for that, you know, in the review. So when you're doing this with fiction texts, you know, going back and citing your evidence, you may want to say, you know what, this works the same way in nonfiction text too. It's a little bit easier actually in nonfiction text because it's a little bit more factual, but just to kind of make those connections, knowing where you're going so that you can lay the foundation, so when you get to pick that back up, it's not the first time they're hearing it. The kids are like, oh wait, oh yeah, we heard that. They have the connections there. So that's the CFIP process, and then it starts all over again. You know, when you're like, okay, we're doing nonfiction, let's think about what assessment we want to do with nonfiction, and then the next time you start the process, you'll start with having done the nonfiction assessment, and then go along that path.
So step 5, if it's planned or talked about at a separate meeting?
Yes,
Usually?
yes. So we've gone through step 4
Okay.
with this group.
And then you go out and you do it.
Mhm. And then they'll come back and say, okay, these are the kids that still need a little bit of help. These are the kids that still have some gaps.
Right.
Yeah. So questions about this? Good, good. The thing that I love about CFIP is that it really focuses on your skills. Like because you guys are the professionals and you know the kids. And it's just meant to, bless you again. It's just meant to help you to really focus your efforts on what the kids need. Bless you again. You're allergic to learning.
That's a theme.
Yeah. Learning can sometimes be uncomfortable and stuff. So what I would tell you is just to kind of get into it and get messy with it. I mean, work through it. Because really there is no wrong way to do it. The wrong way to do it is just to not do it at all. And even if you do it kind of messily, you're still going to uncover some important things that your PLC needs. And what you'll find is that the more you do it, the deeper you go, and the more you start to see, oh, okay, you know what, this helps us to uncover like some strengths and weaknesses in our working group. But it's all about what can I do to help these students understand this material? What did we do in class that gave us this result, and what can we do that'll give us a different result? So yeah, I mean, that's basically CFIP in a nutshell. I will share